100 years of silence, broken in a single decade. 5 families, 5,000 years of prison time. One law did this. The men who swore the oath became the ones who broke it. Today, son, why the empire that ruled America's shadows finally died.
1985, Foley Square, Manhattan. Anthony Salerno walked into court wearing silence like armor for the last time. He was Genevieve's boss, untouchable for 30 years. That day, the government proved untouchable was a myth. Rudolph Giuliani stood before the jury. His weapon wasn't a gun, it was one federal law, RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, written in 1970, ignored by the mob for years. Here's the twist, son. RICO didn't punish one crime. It proved the family itself was the crime. Every boss, soldier, and captain charged as one organization. The commission trial changed everything overnight.
8 men on trial, the heads of New York's 5 families seated in one courtroom together. For a century, bosses never met in public. Now prosecutors force them into the same room. This is where theory bleeds into reality, son. Secrecy was the Mafia's oldest weapon. RICO turned that secrecy into evidence, wiretaps, ledgers, testimony. The silence itself became confession. But laws alone don't kill an empire. Men do. And men talk when prison outweighs loyalty. Enter the second wound, the informant era. Omertà, the sacred vow of silence, began collapsing from within.
Salvatore Gravano, underboss of the Gambino family, broke that vow in 1991. 19 murders confessed. His testimony buried John Gotti, the most photographed boss in American history, for life. Son, the man who enforced the code became the one who erased it. Consiglieres were the Mafia's memory, the ones who advised, calculated, and kept the family alive. Frank Cosa, longtime Gambino consigliere, once said the smartest men never raised their voice twice. But even consiglieres couldn't outthink 100 federal agents with unlimited time and patience.
By the 1990s, sentencing laws stripped away parole. 50 years no longer meant freedom eventually. Men who once absorbed 10 years standing tall now face life without any exit. That's the third wound, son. RICO built the trap, but harsh sentencing sealed it shut. Frank Locascio, Gotti's own consigliere, sat beside him at trial, convicted on the same tapes. The FBI bug hid above a social club, recorded years of private conversation, unfiltered. Gotti's voice, boasting about murder, played back to 12 strangers deciding his future. The boss who once ruled by fear now sounded on tape like any frightened man. That's the fourth wound, son. Technology outpaced tradition. Wiretaps saw what Omertà hid. By the 2000s, a stranger crime struck the Mafia. Not police, not prison, simple irrelevance. Vincent Gigante ruled the Genovese family from the shadows. In public, he played a broken man. For a decade, he wandered Manhattan in a robe and slippers, muttering, feigning madness before every camera. They called him the Oddfather. Judges called it a performance, and the performance worked. Weakness displayed correctly becomes armor. No one prosecutes a man the courts believe is insane. But acting cannot outlast documentation forever. In 1997, doctors confirmed the madness had been theater.
Gigante died in prison in 2005. The last boss who ruled through calculated weakness, gone. Beneath every headline, a deeper wound was spreading. The culture itself had begun to die. Sons of old-world bosses wanted law degrees, not territories. Wanted anonymity, not respect built on fear. The next generation simply stopped arriving. No ceremony, no betrayal, just quiet, permanent absence. Joseph Massino became boss of the Bonanno family in 1991, and he saw the collapse coming. In 2004, Massino did what no sitting boss had ever done. He broke the oath completely. The man who once ordered executions now negotiated his own freedom across a federal table. He wore a hidden wire against his own captains, the commission's oldest law, broken from within. The FBI named their strategy Pop Echelon, recruit the highest men, and the pyramid falls downward. Every arrest on the street was smaller theater. The real war was fought across boardroom tables.
Anthony Sparrow, consigliere of the Bonanno family, once warned his own men directly. "Never trust a boss desperate for a deal," he said. "Desperation always finds an exit." Few listened. By then, decades in prison outweighed any loyalty a fading tradition could offer. Legitimate business simply paid better, son, with none of the surveillance and none of the exposure. Construction, waste management, unions, the old rackets became liabilities once federal monitors moved permanently inside them. Young men who once joined for respect now saw only wiretaps, sentencing, and eventual betrayal. The Mafia's greatest enemy was never the FBI alone. It was time, and what time reveals. Every man who broke the oath made the next man's betrayal easier, faster, less shameful. By 2010, the five families still existed on paper. The empire that ruled shadows had become memory. Decades earlier, Hollywood discovered the Mafia, just as the Mafia discovered it had nothing left to hide. Goodfellas premiered in 1990. Audiences worshipped the code on screen, while informants dismantled it in courtrooms. The more famous the Mafia became, son, the less power it actually held behind closed doors.
John Gotti loved the cameras. Every photograph fed his legend, and every legend fed the case against him. Real bosses once vanished into silence. Gotti built a myth, and myths leave permanent evidence behind. In June 2002, Gotti died in a federal prison hospital. The Teflon Don finally met his verdict. Thousands lined the streets of Queens for his funeral, a parade for a king who lost his kingdom. Look closer at that funeral, son. It wasn't a tribute, it was a eulogy for an entire era. The five families that once controlled ports, unions, and concrete now controlled almost nothing at all.
By 2010, membership had collapsed. Fewer soldiers, fewer captains, fewer men willing to take the oath. Federal agents shifted resources elsewhere, son, not because the Mafia surrendered, but because it stopped being worth chasing. Some crews still exist today, smaller and quieter, running remnants of old rackets in forgotten corners of the city. They avoid violence now. Violence brings headlines, headlines bring indictments, and indictments end everything permanently. The old bosses ruled through fear projected outward. The survivors today ruled through invisibility turned inward. The code depended on three pillars standing together: secrecy, loyalty, and fear, son. Nothing more. One law broke secrecy, betrayal broke loyalty, harsh sentencing broke fear. Remove all three, nothing remains standing. The Mafia never died from a single bullet, a single betrayal, or a single trial. It died from erosion. 100 years of tradition dissolved, not in one war, but in 1,000 small surrenders. Every empire built on silence eventually meets a generation that refuses to stay silent for it.
Remember this above all, son. Power built on fear alone always carries an expiration date. Real power isn't loud, photographed, or worshipped. It stays quiet, disciplined, and answers to no camera. The five Mafia families taught the world exactly how not to build something meant to last.
Son, comment the word Omertà below. Only those who understand silence deserve to be heard. Tell me, which wound killed the Mafia faster, the informants or the sons who simply walked away? Like this, hit hype if the platform allows it, and turn on notifications. No one begs here.
Next, the final chapter of this Mafia glossary, we enter modern territory, the rise of the Mafia in the digital age. Until next time, honor the code, son. Omertà.